Good afternoon, everybody. So great to see everybody today after a one-day post-blizzard. It's wonderful to have you here. We're just so grateful we were able to kind of get cleaned up before today's much-anticipated event. So briefly, I am Mary Glenn. I'm Chief of UN Publications. We also manage this beautiful bookstore, which is such a treat. And together, along with the Bologna Children's Book Fair, we're co-hosting this wonderful exhibit upstairs, which you will see shortly. And in the meantime, we have this beautiful panel with moderated by Maria Russo, who's former children's book editor of the New York Times Book Review, currently editor at Union Square Books, correct? Sorry, editor at large. We haven't had a chance to say hi. One of the most influential people in the children's book scene, and two esteemed authors. We have Hannah Salyer, pronounce it, sorry, whose book is beautiful. It's Pax, and we have one copy. We'll be getting more, but the blizzard kind of interrupted our supply chain, but thank you for being here. And also Elizabeth Zunon, whose beautiful book, Through Sand and Salt, we do have available here too. And without much further intro, I would hand it over to Elena Pasoli, who is the director of the Bologna Children's Book Fair.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you very much to Mary and all the team at UN Publications. And it's been an amazing story of friendship and partnership that brought us to this event. We started cooperating some years ago when we helped for the SDG Book Club initiative, and then we got to know each other better and better and better. We did interesting things Maria will tell about a little bit afterwards in Bologna, and now it's, what can I say, it's not a pleasure, it's huge honor to be here with this exhibition. And thank you to Maria, she's always been a great friend of us, and thank you again. She's always with us when in the important moments of Bologna, and also a big thank you to the Italian Trade Agency that helped us make this real. Thank you to our authors. You will see how nice it's your book hanging among the others upstairs. Okay, thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena, and thank you, everyone, for braving this weather. Maybe it's good because we would have been back to the to the walls there. And it's so nice to see so much interest. And please excuse my voice. I'm at the tail end of a little bit of a cold here. So as Elena said, I'll just give you a little bit of background on this partnership between the UN and the Bologna Children's Book Fair. I mean, it's such a natural fit. The Bologna Children's Book Fair is really the world's leading professional trade fair in this field. And so that means that the exhibitors are really coming from all over the world. So the collaboration with the UN Publications Office started several years ago with, as Elena mentioned, the Sustainable Development Goals Book Club, aiming to promote that culture of sustainability among children and young people. And the fair enthusiastically supported that, and last year even added to the famous Bologna Ragazzi Awards a special category, sustainability, 17 goals for a better future, building on those 17 goals. And this is the 60th anniversary of the Bologna Ragazzi Award, so it's a nice year to have this award kind of foregrounded. And I also wanted to mention a relatively new aspect of the partnership that I love, and if you're at Bologna, I really encourage you to go. For the past 3 years, we do a reading of the Declaration of Rights of the Child at the fair, and it's 40 creators from all around the globe read sections of it. Everyone speaks in their own language. It's really moving and important. So it's highly, highly encourage you to check that out if you can at Bologna. So you can see upstairs the exhibition, the selections made by an international jury that chose 170 of the best books published worldwide on the themes of these 17 goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, of which our two esteemed panelists are represented with their beautiful books. So this is an exhibition really for parents, teachers, educators, and librarians trying to find the best books for kids to sort of connect them to the global community of books and books that really are interested in building a better future. There was a group of school children here on Friday, which I heard was really special and raucous. So hopefully there'll be more while the exhibition is up there. And as a special bonus, you'll see upstairs, because we have support also from the Italian Trade Agency, there's a selection of 40 outstanding Italian books up there as well that fit with the theme. So again, thank you for coming, and I hope that you'll get to spend some time in the exhibition as well. And now let me introduce our panelists. Elizabeth Zunon was born in Albany, New York, spent her childhood in West Africa, Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire. She grew up listening to bedtime stories in English after coming home from speaking French all day at school. And she all the while loved to draw, paint, make up dances, and play dress up. She returned to the United States, graduated from the Rhode Island School of Design with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Illustrations, and now she's back in Albany, where she's the author and illustrator of many, I would say, more than a dozen. I was trying, well, do you have an exact number? 21. I was going to say 24, but about that. So she's really prolific. And each one is more beautiful than the next. Her work is largely influenced by people, places, and things from her childhood in the Ivory Coast and as the product of these two cultures. And the book upstairs, you can see, is Through Sand and Salt, A Tale of Discovery Across the Sahara. And Hannah Salyer. Hannah's deep reverence for the natural world was fostered while growing up on the East Coast of the U.S., and she brings that wonderment to her work as an award-winning illustrator, author, educator, mixed media artist, and gallery director. In 2023, Hannah was selected to be a Maurice Sendak Fellow, and she teaches art to students of all ages, including at Parsons School of Design. She's also a ceramicist, which I would like to talk more about later with her, and co-founder and co-director of a gallery called the Underland Gallery. And always in her work, she's exploring the inextricable bonds that tie humans to the lives of other creatures with whom we share our planet. And she lives in Brooklyn. Okay, and so when I say these are two of my favorite creators, you might say, oh, of course you say that. But I have the receipts because on January 31st, 2020, when I was still at the New York Times, I reviewed their two books together. It's crazy, but true. So I'll just read, there were short little reviews. It was Bedtime for Sweet Creatures, written by the wonderful Nikki Grimes, who's been at Bologna as a special guest of honor. Okay. Grimes and Zunon capture the time for bed dance with verve, imagination, and empathy in this tale of a not sleepy child and her creative appeal to stay up longer. On each lovely page, Zunon collages realistic images of the family alongside fanciful, mystical-looking animals. With its refreshing ending, the girls end up in their parents' bed, as so many children do. This one has the feel of an all-time great bedtime picture book. Okay. Sorry, I'm not, my mic game is a little off here. Okay, and Packs, Strength in Numbers by Hannah Salyer. Showing how different animals benefit from living and working in groups. Salyer's debut is a great example of inventiveness possible in a non-fiction picture book. It all culminates brilliantly in an image of humans who sometimes need reminding that we are better together. All right, let's start off by asking each of you to kind of introduce your book. How did it come to be? How did you create it? And when you think about it now, how do you see it fitting into these development goals?
Go left to right. I can start. Is this okay? The mic? distance. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I'm Hannah, and I wrote and illustrated Pax Strength in Numbers. As Maria said, it was my debut picture book back in 2020. And it was actually born of an image that I made in undergrad. And it was an image of wolves running in a tight, kind of flowing composition. And I came up with the idea for a story from that, to focus on different species who work together and why. So Pax kind of takes you as the reader through visiting different animals, birds, insects, fish, mammals. I tried to hit all of the different creatures, have them all represented. And it really is a book about working together, which feels definitely in line with the Sustainable Development Goals on many levels. I think that, the more obvious ones might be climate and life underwater, life on land, but I think it's the 17th one that involves partnership and cooperation to actually bring these goals to fruition. And that's the underpinning of this book. It's really about why these creatures are gathering. And as Maria, you mentioned in your review, it ends on humans because, again, we need reminders that we're animals as well, in the good sense. We're a part of the larger picture. I think grown-ups have a tendency to separate, delineate humans versus non-humans, other creatures. But we really are all on the same planet together, and should be, looking out for each other, working together. I can maybe flip through the book.
Sure.
Just show a little.
Give me some of your favorites.
Maybe I'll stand. So here's the wolves that I mentioned. This wasn't the initial image, but it kind of, the inspiration image inspired this one, led to this one. Let's see, some of my favorites. Here's some leafcutter ants. And I love the flamingos. Where are they? Oh, yes. Oh. Yes. Thank you. Wow. Yes. Together we're better. That's the refrain of this book. So each page focuses on the thing that these creatures do together. So the leafcutter ants say, "Together we harvest." The lions say, "Together we nurture." And we go through the book like this, visiting each species and finding out what it is they do together. I did a sneaky thing, though, when I was making this book, because I felt, it was important to explore each species and what they did together within their own species, but I also wanted to really hammer home the idea that, symbiotic relationships in nature are important and that we're all working together on our planet. So I hid this and didn't really hide it, but a lot of people forget to look at the case cover. So I put this under the jacket because it's important to remember that we're all, like I said, all on the same planet, all working towards the same things, ultimately. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Beautifully.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth, for holding this.
Liz?
So my book is Through Sand and Salt, A Tale of Discovery Across the Sahara. This book was published just over a year ago by Bloomsbury Books. And it's about a young boy named Malik and his father who live in Mali, in the middle of the Sahara Desert. So they are traders, they travel through the Sahara with a caravan of camels carrying loads of salt. Salt comes in big chunks that are need to be dug out from underground. So they travel from the town of Taoudeni, from the north of Mali, down to Timbuktu, which sits near the Niger River. So I was inspired to write this book because I'm inspired. I love thinking about where things come from, especially where our food comes from, and the people who touch our food and who create the things that we need and use and eat and drink in our daily lives. And salt exists within our bodies in probably almost every meal that we eat. So I was intrigued to create this book in terms of thinking about where food comes from, but also growing up in the tropics in Côte d'Ivoire, in a hot, humid, very green place. I was always intrigued when I saw images of deserts and camels and environments that were so different from what I was used to. So through doing some research, I realized, people have been transporting salt through the desert for centuries. So I went down a lot of different rabbit holes while researching this book. Maybe I will, thank you. Switch places. So Malik and his father are Tuareg people, and the Tuareg have a history of expert navigation through the desert. So they begin in Taoudeni, and you can see the salt mine here. There are people digging up the slabs of salt and cutting them into big bricks, which they attach on the backs of their camels. In this book, they travel with 12 camels, but this has been happening in caravans of up to 10,000 camels, during the Middle Ages, when there was a lot more trans-Saharan trade routes happening. So they travel, and in each oasis town where they stop to drink and rest and eat, they trade the salt for something different. So young Malik is learning about the value of how this one particular item exists in various communities. You can use it for food. You can use it to you can use it for trade. You can use it. It's in some places. Salt has been really as important as money or gold. So people trade in chunks of salt rather than in nuggets of gold in the past. So he learns about different communities that live in various oases through the Sahara Desert. Of course, there's a sandstorm because that has to have some drama if you're traveling through the desert. He loses his camel Lakmar, and he uses some of the skills that he has learned from his father throughout their journey, and figuring out how he can find Lakmar once again. And they end up in Timbuktu, which many people don't realize is a real city. So in Timbuktu, there are markets and people, thriving communities of people who exist, who thrive, who make their living trading their goods with each other, with goods that come from all around the continent of Africa and all around the world. So they share a meal with the other traders that they have traded their salt with. And then, even though Malik disappointed his father by losing his camel in the sandstorm, Malik's father sees that he learned a lot of skills during this journey, and he gives him the opportunity to lead the camel caravan back home. And one interesting thing that I learned is that they don't actually sit on camelback to travel. The camels walk. The camels are carrying all their loads of goods, and the people are walking by foot, 500 miles. Usually they walk in the evening and at nighttime when it's not extremely hot. So yeah, that is Through Sand and Salt. There's some interesting facts about salt and travel and camel caravans in the back. Thank you very much.
So, and when you think about, your book has so many of the goals embedded in the story, just naturally in the story. But when you look at the goals, can you see some of the ones that strike you?
Yeah, the The one that stands out to me the most is goal number 8. It was economic sustainability, I think. A lot of this research that I did for this book, I actually spoke to a gentleman who is of the Tuareg tribe who lives in Timbuktu. And he used to make a really good living by being a tour guide for tourists that would travel to Timbuktu and that wanted to ride a camel through the desert. I would have loved to do that one day. But, you know, economic and political situations are always changing across the globe and across Africa, and Mali in particular. He has been out of work for many years. So his ancestors used to make a living traveling throughout the desert, and he used to make a living helping tourists learn about his country. So I think economic development and having a job.
And seeing children involved too.
Yeah. And teaching the children what our ancestors did for a living. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, speaking of children, do you both think about how, when you write a picture book like this, you're publishing with American publishers initially, how do you think about how your book can reach children in other parts of the world, and how does that? And then, are there some examples of especially great moments of your books traveling across cultures and nations?
Well, obviously, the first immediate answer is if the book is lucky enough to be translated into another language. For example, this book, Through Sand and Salt, has been translated into Japanese. So I'm always intrigued by what a child thousands of miles away who might not look like the character in the book, what they might think of this book. And I always try to think about, when I'm writing or illustrating a book that features children, how are children going to be able to connect to it? So I was thinking while writing this book, as a child, I always wanted to please my parents. I wanted them to be proud of me. So even though this book takes place in the middle of a desert with camels and salt, I would hope that a young child living somewhere else might be able to identify with that simple feeling of trying to please somebody, or even the food that we eat. We all have salt in our diet, but we might not think about where our foods come from. So even looking at, the plate of food that you're going to eat for dinner tonight might be connected to all the continents. So I'm always thinking about who made this, where did it come from, and what in a child's life is similar that they might be able to identify with in this book.
That's a really beautiful answer. Yeah, I think especially when I'm working on a book like Pax, where I'm contending with other species, there's a lot of children's books that have animal characters that focus on animals in a nonfiction kind of context. And I think it's really interesting to me that, it feels very natural for young children to relate to animals and to see them as kin and to see them as thinking, feeling beings, which as we get older, we're kind of conditioned not to think about. That we, like I mentioned before, there's this kind of othering that goes on. And I think it's really beautiful when a child can pick up a book and, whether it be about other creatures or about people who, maybe they see themselves in or maybe they are learning about, books can serve as a kind of a door. They can be transcendent. And in that, too, children can see themselves. It can become a mirror. And I think it's, when I was a kid, I think that other creatures, I grew up as an only child. I did not have siblings, but I had a lot of pets. And they helped me understand my role and who I was as a creature on this planet. Not only a human, but how to be a good creature. And how to be a good person.
There's a wonderful book called
Cy Montgomery. It's a really beautiful book called How to Be a Good Creature. So I'm constantly thinking about that when I am working on books, and certainly for PAX, I was thinking about, okay, how can I kind of have these really beautiful, playful moments within these specific species, and then zoom out and help the reader connect to the larger picture.
Has it been translated yet?
Yeah, it's been translated to Korean and Chinese, I believe. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when we talk about children's book creators, and sometimes they're contrasted to adult book writers, and people will almost always come back to the idea that children's writers have even more of a sense of mission, right? So maybe this is a good place to talk a little bit about, you're alone in your studios, you're looking for inspiration, you're looking to keep going, but is there something that you feel about the mission of children's book creators that that keeps you going and that you could share with us?
Okay, I'll start. I think I get very verklempt at the idea that I'm connected to a kind of a long lineage of storytellers, and we all are ultimately artists and all of us. It's a very human thing to tell stories, whether you're passing down a story that's been in your family, whether you're reading a story to your grandchild. I think it's important for me to have a lot of fun and have play and experimentation when I'm creating the work. But I don't take the job lightly. I understand that it can really shape, young children's perceptions of the world and how they relate to others. And so, yeah, it's this balance of play and then also understanding that, wow, this is a really incredible gift and opportunity that I have to share with children, and hopefully, open some doors, show some new things to them, and help them learn. Yeah, that's what I would say.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think when I'm working on a children's book, I always fall in love with the subject matter that I'm working on, and I always go down a lot of rabbit holes when I'm doing my research, as I said. So part of what I try to do when I create the books for young children is try to make the reader also fall in love with the things that I fell in love with. Well, whether it be the setting or the colors, I just became obsessed with how can I use blue and brown to show, different settings of different times of day in the Sahara Desert, but make it look interesting to a young child. So I'm always trying to create something artistically that I'm inspired by, that I can put on the page, literally with my paintbrush, and also thinking about stories that might not have been shared, about people that might not be very well known, but always building on something that I think children already know or will identify with. And just making those human connections between something that you might not think about, but that might feature in your everyday life.
Well, that's beautiful, beautiful answers. Well, I want to leave some time for questions from our audience, so I just want to end with something I always try to ask incredible creators like you. Since we have an audience of children's book lovers here, can you give maybe a shout out to books you've been reading lately, creators that you're especially inspired by or interested in at the moment?
Well, I have a 3.5-year-old. So lately we've been reading a lot of the books that I read when I was little. And so we've been rereading over and over The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats, which is a classic. And I'm embarrassed to say a lot of Monster Truck and Paw Patrol books. So we're mixing in the classics with the television shows also.
One book that came out recently that I'm such a big fan of is if you oh gosh, the title is gonna escape me now. If You Make a Call on a Banana Phone,
yes,
by Gideon Starer, and and
Emily
Emily Hughes, yes. I just found it to be such a delight, and certainly, you know, that one is a maybe more imaginative kind of story about a little kid who has a banana, and they get a call from a gorilla, and the illustrations feel so timeless, the story feels so playful, and it does open up space for questions and you know, the reader to kind of see themselves in there and think about the things that are being said.
That's a great one, and it's great how you can see how Emily put a whole backstory just in the art that you wouldn't necessarily see in the words.
Yes.
There's a new sibling in the picture
It's
that maybe
yeah.
is the reason this kid maybe needs a friend.
Yes, it's a wonderful example of the words and pictures working just so beautifully together.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so thank you for those. And Snowy Day, as I just read recently, the most checked out book in the history of the New York Public Library is The Snowy Day. So that's exciting. So, okay, so let's please ask some questions.
So before I worked at the UN, I was actually a book editor. Politics and finance and archaeology and the hard side kind of stuff. And I would always, people would ask, you know, like, oh, I wrote a children's book. How do I get it published? But I know what the criteria is for these kind of, you know, adult nonfiction books. But what do you look for? What do editors look for in what's going to make a really fine children's book?
Oh, wow. Is that for me?
Yeah.
Well, I work on picture books, so I'm looking for, for me, the picture book is, unfortunately, I'm a word person by nature, but I understand and I bow down to the visual with picture books. It's really, as one of my colleagues says, it's an 80% visual medium, and you have to accept that if you're a word person. So for me, that doesn't mean that the writing is easy. In fact, it's probably harder because you have to write something that opens up a space for talented people like these to tell the visual story. So I'll speak only for picture books. I'm really looking for, if it's just a text, it's a text that understands the medium of the picture book, the art form of the picture book, and understands that it's a visual primarily medium. And then storytelling that is, I almost look for like a physical feeling that I get sometimes. It's like I can remember when my husband is here, when our kids were, when I was reading picture books to my kids, the really good ones, there was a certain moment, and usually it's about like 3/4 of the way through, where they would almost make a sound like, you know, and I feel like I'm looking for the text that makes me have that moment, almost like a physical, yes, you know, this is the moment. So it's, you know, that's not very scientific, I guess, but that is, so that's as far as text. And then illustrators, you just look at it and you fall in love. Do you want to say anything about getting published, or your journey to getting published? As it is a dream, you do have a dream job for many, many people.
Yes, I'm so grateful. I love what we get to do. I actually came into it via a bookstore in Manhattan called Books of Wonder.
Oh, you
pretty
were a
iconic.
Books of Wonder person.
I was a bookseller there right after undergrad. I knew I wanted to go into picture books, but you know, it takes some time to get your foot in the door of the industry. And I was like, well, this is a beautiful store to spend some time in. I learned a lot. I thought I knew picture books. I did not know picture books before I started working. I mean, I did, but not in the way that they expect you to there. So I learned a lot. And that's how I met my first agent, because a lot of children's books fans and people in the industry come into Books of Wonder, and that was kind of from then on. It was that's how PAX came about. That was the weigh in for me. What about
That's
you?
awesome. I applied for a job at Books of Wonder, didn't get it. But I used to go all the time and hang out and look at books and say, one day maybe I'll have a book in here.
It's all about the time of year that you go.
Let's see, how did I get started? I had an art portfolio. I studied illustration, and then I was looking for illustration jobs here in Manhattan, going to events where I could talk to other authors and illustrators and agents and editors and trying to see where maybe my work might be able to fit in. I met my agent, Lori Nowicki, who's here in the back somewhere, when I was trying to get illustration jobs in New York. And within maybe 6 months of starting to work with my agent, she was able to find me my first illustration contract. And it worked out very well because I also lost my day job working in a flower shop and broke up with my boyfriend at the time. So thanks, Lori, for changing my life. And it's been a really fun journey of exploration and learning and creation that I'm very grateful for with children's books.
More questions?
Thank you. Hello, my name is Manuela. I have a question which is, yes, related to the children's book in general. As you mentioned, once you mentioned that you have a little child and you read books, instantly I connected to the fact that I also read books to my child, and mine is a little bit older, but I try to read the books that I was reading when I was a kid, and all of a sudden I realized, oh my goodness, there are so many evil characters that are very, very evil. I think about Hansel and Gretel, The Little Mermaid, or the Snow White, Cinderella. Right now, the books that we see are very different. Like, there are almost none evil characters. And I was wondering if it is part of a culture, on a movement, or how are we shaping it differently, the new children right now, respect of how was it in our time? Or what's your opinion about it?
That is an interesting question. The snowy day, no evil. Just fun and joy. But I just bought the new retelling of Rapunzel by Mac Barnett, illustrated by Carson Ellis, which highly recommend. And it's just interesting. It's almost an exact example of something that you're right. We're not seeing so much quite anymore, but maybe there's a way that you have to do it that's slightly different. I would have to think about, have you guys seen that book yet?
I haven't gotten to read through it, but I've seen some of the illustrations. They look beautiful.
But it is true that we all go back and read the books that we grew up on, and it's not just that it's not always in a good way, right? Oh, these were so scary. They're also, racist and misogynist and full of harshness that we don't necessarily want to share with our children anymore. So it's a real problem, I think, for parents and librarians. One thing that I did as a parent is you don't have to read every word. You can kind of focus on the illustrations and put in different words. But as far as picture books that are willing to look at the harsh side of life, I think a lot of Liz's books have depicted circumstances that are a struggle and that maybe have a little bit of darkness in them. So do you want to speak a little bit to how you?
Yeah, I just always try to focus on not the harshness of the struggle, but the overcoming of the struggle and the overcoming of evil, or the changing your personal situation. Evil and sad, bad things are part of plenty of books, but I think more and more there are books that show how resilient we can be in overcoming those things, and a lot of those old classics have themes that we don't really abide by and live by anymore. So I think it's important to just show how we can move past these bad feelings and bad things.
But you do see them. It's not. I think the books. If you widen your view of children's books, maybe they're not the best sellers, But I think there are books out there that will grapple with the hard realities of life. The trick is to do it beautifully and in a way that doesn't maybe make you, oh, I'm not going to read that one again.
I think to your point, sometimes those, maybe not so much when it's a racist trope or something in an older title, but in newer titles, if an evil character is present, they're there as a tool, which is to help kids, really think about the story and why are they evil? What are they doing? I really value books that pose questions to the reader. I think it's so important for kids to be challenged in stories because they know what's right, and it helps them be affirmed in that in knowing, oh, wait a minute, what they're doing is wrong. I know what should be done here. It's a really good question, though. It's very interesting.
Okay, a couple more, one or two more questions. Let me
over here.
Do you mind passing this?
So the last answers to the last question made me think, do you think of, when you're creating your work, do you think of a reader, any reader, a parent, a teacher, a kid, or is it really a process of something speaks to you and whomever you're working with at the time?
You want to take that one first?
Selfishly, I think about myself as primarily the artist and the illustrator, and what visual goals do I have for this book, and how can I make them interesting for the 6-year-old me. I have illustrated many more books than I have written, so I'm always thinking about art first, and what art can I make that will grab the reader, that will interest me as an adult creating the art, and that will grab a 6-year-old to take the book off the shelf.
Yeah, I concur with that answer. I have a lot of the same, early on in the process, I'm really digging deep down inside myself to revisit and reconnect with little me and think about what was I interested in? What did I like? What was I drawn to? I find that the times, especially early on in my art career, where I was trying really hard to create to something or to someone, the work falls flat. There's something about, there's a truth, a personal truth when you're more introspective, or at least for me, when I'm in the studio, I feel like it's more of an authentic process for me to just be digging up what is deep down inside of my consciousness, play, experimentation with medium, and then as the story develops, maybe there will be little considerations that come as we're kind of shaping the book. But yeah, that's what I would say as well. Good question.
Was that our last question?
It's a great way to end, and I think it just really shows. I think the magic of these books and the Bologna Children's Book Fair Awards is that you can address. There's no more serious topics than the Sustainable Development Goals, but you can address it in such a way for children to make them be able to relate and understand, and that's what we're trying to do, is build great global citizens for peace and security in the world. So I want to thank everybody for coming. Take a few minutes to browse the bookshop if you'd like. I'm going to invite everybody to go upstairs to see the exhibit when you're ready. food and drink to fortify yourself for the cold weather, please. And just the restrooms are down the hall over there before, just to tell people where they are. But thank you so much.